So there is one decade that quietly decides whether you're going to retire comfortable or retiring counting every single penny. And almost everybody gets it wrong because almost everybody is staring at the wrong decade entirely. If you ask people which 10 years matter most for their money, most will point at their 20s, right? It's the time where you've got a long stretch out ahead of you. Start early, let it run. A few might say their 50s when retirement's suddenly close enough to see, but both of them miss it. The most dangerous decade in finance is the one that nearly everyone sails straight through. It is your 40s. And the reason it's so dangerous is that nothing about it feels dangerous. The damage doesn't come from some roulette wheel play, like a dodgy crypto coin or a scam or a buy-to-let that went sideways. It creeps in quietly, almost weirdly politely, somewhere in between your 40th and 50th birthday. And most people never feel it land at all because your 40s are the one decade where building wealth and two of the biggest forces in building your money finally turn up in the same room at the same time. And it's the exact decade where nearly everyone lets that kind of overlap, that Venn diagram, slip straight through their fingers. Now, in a minute, I'll show you two people, same age, same starting pot, both chasing the same identical retirement number. One of them hands over £80,000 more off their own money than the other for the exact same result. The only thing that separates them is 10 years of time. So the question is, why do we all get this decade wrong? Because everywhere you look, personal finance is busy shouting at the sort of 25-year-old to start investing yesterday. And on paper, the maths agrees, right? Start early, more time, more growth, obviously. But be honest about what your 20s and 30s and early 30s actually look like. You had time, sure, but what you didn't have was money. You were on probably an entry-level salary, trying to scrape together a house deposit, still clearing student loans, handing over something like 1,500 quid a month for a nursery. You weren't building wealth in your 20s and early into your early 30s. You were staying afloat. And staying afloat in that decade is a genuine win. And then your 40s turn up, right? And something quietly shifts under your feet. The pay rises land. For a lot of people, this is when earnings are quietly hitting their lifetime peak or certainly close to it. The ONS puts average full-time pay in that 40 to 50 band north of £50,000. So the kids start school so that nursery bill vanishes overnight. The mortgage stops feeling a lot like a monster because you might have paid it down a little bit. And for the first time in your adult life, there's real money left at the end of the month, which is your ammunition, your fuel for your growth. Now, all of that sounds like the happy ending, doesn't it? But that is why it's so dangerous. And this is exactly where the danger starts. Because the second the pressure lifts, this pull kicks in to finally reward yourself, right? And I get it. You've earned it. You want to enjoy it. So in goes the kitchen extension, the nicer family car on 600 quid a month finance deal, the holiday that's a tiny bit fancier than last year's. Your account number looks healthier than it did at 20 or 30. So you feel secure. And behind it all is it completely silently, and there's a clock that is running down on the one thing that does the real work. Now, let me explain what I mean by that, because this is the whole game. Compound growth. Your money making money, then that money making money too. Now, that is absolutely bone idle at the start of that journey. Look at the graph there. For years, it barely does a thing. And then right near the end, as you can see, it goes vertical, it's exponential. And that final stretch throws off way more than all of the earlier years put together. But, and this is the bit that catches people out, it only does that for money that you already have in the market. You can't sort of like sprint onto the platform of a train and leap onto it once it's in full flow, once it's left the station at like full speed. You need to be on it in the first place whilst it's pulling away. So picture two people, both 40, both with £25,000 sitting in their current pension, both wanting to stop work at 67. Same start line, same finish line. The first one looks at that 25 grand and thinks, right, okay, this is my window. This is my opportunity to push the accelerator. So she puts in 500 a month and then basically forgets about it and gets on with her whole entire life. Now, 27 years later, she's got roughly £547,000. And here's the part that always gets me, and it shocks me every time I see these sorts of calculations. Out of all of that, she only actually put in about £187,000 of her own money. The rest, 360,000 odd, was just growth. That exponential curve doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Money, her money made while she was doing absolutely nothing at all. Now, the other one decides to enjoy his 40s. Fair enough, totally understand. He leaves his 25,000 ticking over, and it drifts up to about 30 by the time that he's 50. And then one morning, he has a proper look at his pension, and as per usual, the panic sets in. He wants the exact same pot that the first lady had. That exact same £547,000. But now he's only got 17 years to do it in, not 27. And that is the key part. So the question is, what does he have to put away every single month in order to hit that? Well, it's not 500, it's 1,164, more than double every single month for 17 years straight. And when you total it all up, he pours in around £80,000 more of his own take home than she ever did. And the two of them retire in precisely the same spot, same pot value, same day. He just paid 80 grand extra for the privilege of starting 10 years late. So when you skip your 40s, you're not losing kind of 10 years of saving. You're losing 10 years that were doing the saving for you effectively. And once you're in your 50s with no real pot behind you, compounding can't carry you as much anymore. You've got to carry it through the kind of brutal life-squeezing savings rate that no £600 a month car survives, let me tell you. So the question then is, why doesn't everyone just be the first one? Well, this is the conversation I end up having over and over again with the people that I coach and work with one-to-one. And it's almost never that they didn't understand any of this. Of course they don't. They're all smart people. They get it. What got them there was a handful of very specific, very British blind spots. And the first one is the mortgage. Now, we are obsessed as a nation with owning our homes, owning a home in any right, but also outright. I will see 43-year-olds throwing every spare penny at overpaying the mortgage fixed at like 4%, whilst quietly paying like the bare legal minimum into their pension. And I understand the pull. I really, really do. Honestly, there is something kind of deep entrenched within us that just wants that debt gone. I totally understand it. But in these scenarios, we have to look at the costs. So when you say, for example, use salary sacrifice, that's where you agree to take a little bit less pay on paper each month that goes into your pocket, but your employer drops that money straight into your pension before the tax man gets anywhere near it. Now, if you're a high rate taxpayer, so you're earning over 50 grand, putting £1,000 in costs you about 580 quid out of your real take home pay. So that's what you'd have to sacrifice to get £1,000 in your pension. So you've turned 580 into 1,000 before the market's done a single thing for you. And then that 1,000 compounds for 20 odd years on top of that. That uplift of closing that gap is absolutely key. And trading that away to shave a bit off a cheap-ish 4% debt, I'm not sure that's entirely sensible. But ultimately, it's your choice. It's this route, not doing it this way, in my view, is quietly torching a fortune. The second trap is sitting right in your income band your 40s tends to drop you into. So there is a stretch of earnings in this country that is genuinely punishing. Cross £50,270 and your tax on every extra pound jumps from 20 to 40%. It's called the higher rate tax band. But then between 60 and 80 grand, you hit the high income child benefit charge, which is where the government slowly claws back your child benefit back off of you the more that you earn. So if you put all that together, and a parent of two in that band they can effectively lose like 53, even kind of like 60 pence extra on the pound. And most people just grit their teeth and swallow it as a cost of doing well. It is absolutely crazy. But that income above that threshold, if you sacrificed it straight into your pension and you step around that 40% by bringing your adjusted net income down, you keep every penny of your child benefit. And you're basically buying your retirement at discount that HMRC is like footing the bill for. It's crazy. And the last one is an absolutely silent assassin. It's a quiet killer because it does the damage even if you get kind of everything else right. So here's the key part. When auto enrollment came in 2012, it's basically just a rule where you get automatically opted into your workplace pension unless you actively opt out. What it did is it dragged millions of us into savings who never would have done previously. Great thing, net positive, completely a good thing. But it created a completely new unseen problem, which is that your money lands into your pension into what's called the default fund. That's the investment fund within your pension that they park you in unless you tell them otherwise, and most people don't. And then it just sits there forgotten for decades. Now, on the face of it, that doesn't seem too bad. But here's the trouble with the default investment fund. It is designed to be one size fits all, a shoe that fits everyone. It's built to keep everyone calm. So it's usually stuffed with low risk stuff, bonds, cash, the slow, steady, low drama stuff. Because the last thing that your pension provider wants is you ringing up in a panic when the market wobbles. And that is completely sensible if you're 64 and about to retire. It's quietly disastrous if you're 40. Because at 40, you're not touching your money for 25 years, basically, 27 years. You don't need it to be kept calm. You need it to grow. What you actually want in there is exposure as much as you possibly can to the asset class of equities. That's where the long-term growth comes out. So something like a global sort of passive index fund, a pot that spreads your money across a thin slice of thousands of companies across the world at once, is the perfect vehicle for a long-term retirement fund. And the madness here is that the gap between a more cautious default fund plodding along at around 4, maybe 5% a year max, and a global fund doing 7 or 8% over those same 2 and a bit decades, it's not small. It's not academic. It's the difference that halves your final pot. It is crazy. You could save like an absolute maniac through your 40s and 50s, dodge every other trap, do everything right, and still walk away with half of what you would have purely because your money spent 25 years sat in the wrong gear. in the wrong fund. And nobody ever, until now, told you to move. Now, one thing that we haven't touched in this video is actually making sure that you're using your ISA allowance effectively in this decade as well, which is why I really think that you should watch this video here next, because I actually go through each individual ISA and rank it according to what I think is the least effective to the most effective ISA. Some of the decisions I think are a bit hotly contested, so give it a click and I will see you there.